Well, it was supposed to be a staring contest. I was dared to do a staring contest. It didn't unfortunately work because I failed so badly. So wait, so this was sponsored by Mommies Corporation. Yeah, there we go. Now, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, boys and girls. How are we all doing today? What time was this? This was what, 45 minutes? 45 minutes, 45 seconds. 0:45, Muses fails, or no, not fails, loses the staring competition. Fantastic. Yeah, so, today we are going to continue our reading of the English Constitution simply because it is more topical than, well, okay. No, that's not true. Bagehot is one of the most topical reads that we can have right now between the English Constitution and Lombard Street. But we are going to read the English Constitution as a tribute to Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II. God bless the Queen. God save the Queen. What am I saying? Yeah. And in part as a unrecognized warning to King Charles III, who will, of course, say all of these nice things and then probably not do them, as he's basically done all his life, right? There's a reason why nobody really expected Charles to want to be the king. Like Charles himself, I don't think wanted to be the king. He should have just said like, no, give it to Will. Which, interestingly enough, isn't it, that William is actually named after the Conqueror, which is kind of apt in this modern age of strife and conflict. And so I don't. Yeah, we shall see how that turns out. What time was this? 2 minutes and 45 seconds. William and Kate, no, is named after the Conqueror. Conqueror. Is that not how you spell Conqueror? Conquer. Oh, roar. There we go. Oops. I wonder who named Will. Was it the Duke of Edinburgh? No, that doesn't matter. It's not important. Anyway, so we shall start with our reading of chapter 2 of the English Constitution, which in my book starts on page 27. And in the book that I sent out to everyone that wanted one, it will be page 27th. And for the rest of you, find it and follow along. Obviously, most of you will not follow along. Is that even a question? I would. Most of you are just, Okay. Chapter 2. The prerequisites of cabinet government and the peculiar form which they have assumed in England. And keep in mind, right, this is in the Victorian era. So, cabinet government is rare because its prerequisites are many. It requires the coexistence of several national characteristics which are not often found together in the... I feel like we've read this. It doesn't matter. In the world, and which should be perceived more distinctly than they often are. It is fancied that the possession of certain intelligence and a few simple virtues are the sole requisites. These mental and moral qualities are necessary, but much else is necessary also. A cabinet government is the government of a committee elected by the legislature, and there are therefore a double set of conditions to it. First, those which are essential to all elective governments as such, and second, those which are requisite to this particular elective government. There are prerequisites for the genus and additional ones for the species. I remember talking about this and how it was considered cool and part of the cosmopolitan crowd that you are able to quote Charles Darwin at this particular time, right? Because Darwinian theory of evolution had really taken off when after my boy Chuck wrote his On the Origin of Species. And so that is why, even someone like Bagehot will not, an intellectual will was the case. And so Bagehot would quote Charles by talking about genus and species, or yeah, not necessarily Charles, but the entire theory of evolution by quoting genus and species, just to be cool, but that's not really how it works. Anyway, the first prerequisite of elective government is the mutual confidence of the electors. We are so accustomed to submit to be ruled by elected ministers that we are apt to fancy all mankind would readily be so too. Knowledge and civilization have at least made this progress, that we instinctively, without argument, almost without consciousness, allow a certain number of specified persons to choose our rulers for us. It seems to us the simplest thing in the world, but it is one of the gravest things. The peculiar marks of semi-barbarous people are diffuse distrust and indiscriminate suspicion. People, in all but the most favored times and places, are rooted to the places where they were born, think the thoughts of those places, and can endure no other thoughts. The next parish, even, is suspected. Its inhabitants have different usages, almost imperceptibly different, but yet different. They speak a varying accent, they use a few peculiar words. Tradition says that their faith is dubious, and if the next parish is a little suspected, the next county is much more suspected. Here is a definite beginning of new maxims, new thoughts, new ways, the immemorial boundary mark beginning in feeling a strange world. I can't read today, oh my god. And if the next county is dubious, a remote county is untrustworthy. Vagrants come from thence, men know, and they know nothing else. The inhabitants of the north speak a dialect different from the dialect of the south. They have other laws, another aristocracy, another life. In ages when distant territories are blanks in minds, when neighborhoods is a sentiment, when locality is a passion, a concerted cooperation between remote regions is impossible even on trivial matters. Neither would rely enough upon good faith, good sense, and good judgment of the other. Neither could enough calculate on the other. And this is something that we are still seeing today, but we are seeing it in a different landscape. Let's talk about this real quick because this is actually kind of important. Bagehot talks about geographical divisions. Right, geographical divisions. And these come from the inability for people in these divisions to communicate, and therefore they don't understand each other. Right? I think that makes perfect sense to everyone who's here. In the modern world, these same divisions exist, but within different social groups, social echo chambers. I hope that also makes. Oh, is it? Oh, it's a little long. Let's move this over here. That should make it easier. There we go. And therefore they don't understand each other. Social echo chambers, fantastic. And that is one of the defining characteristics of our modern society, right? When people say that our modern society is divided and it's fighting itself, and they're talking about problems within democracy, it really is the same thing that Bagehot is talking about here. Modern discussions on the failure of democracy is exactly what Bagehot. Oh, I can't spell Bagehot. Bagehot is talking about here with parishes and counties. Right? It makes sense, doesn't it? And I hope it makes sense to everyone here that the only way around this issue. Actually, let's rephrase that. Original way around this issue was communication. Was the invention of long distance communication. England and Scotland were brought closer together by the railways. Let's talk about telegraphs, newspapers, wider circulation, newspapers. And so the country started to share one overarching the country started to share one overarching culture, right? Started to share one overarching culture. And that is the dignified branch of the government that Bagehot will get into later, which is actually the monarchy. Culture, the monarchy, which then allows what Bagehot calls the efficient parts of the government, i.e., the unelected, or the semi-elected leaders of the parties of parliament, to then get on with the business of government, and that is, that is essentially the solution to this particular problem, right? And so, just like the original solution, invention of long distance communication, modern solution to the same problem would be better communication between the disparate social echo chambers. But therein lies the problem, right? Like, even nativists in our modern society, even nativists are let me put it this way. Modern nativists are no longer limited to geography, right? Modern left and right share much of their struggles across countries, which makes it incredibly difficult to converse for each other, right? If we think back to CPAC, and which is the conservative whatever blah thing, and its celebration of Viktor Orban, right, which is just such a, it's just I'll give two examples. Okay, example one, a progressive celebration of, what is the name? Piketty, right? Piketty. I need to look this up before I make a fool of this. Piketty? Piketty, yes, capital. Which is just wrong. Like, this I can't believe, like, how how anyway, it's just wrong. Okay, it's not wrong, it's a very unkind reading of a social phenomenon and an attribution of malice where there probably is not. There is no malice, there is only opportunism, right? Attributing malice to opportunism, which is a very conspiratorial but also populist thing to do. So that's the first example. Example two, I think it was CPAC, right? CPAC, Orban. Yes. CPAC and Viktor Orban. I can't remember if his name was spelled with a K or a C. With a K. Got it. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So this is really not a problem that is limited to one side of the political spectrum, right? Like, this lack of communication is completely and absolutely the fault of our modern society's redivision into different counties, into faraway counties, except instead of the lack of communication doesn't come from the increase in distance, but rather the generation of echo chambers. And anyone who claims, oh, conservatives are in their own echo chambers, blah blah, and we're just trying to help the society, As progressives, I'm sorry, you are just wrong. Having said that, of course, all of the conservatives or nativists who are going, oh, all of the progressive libtards, blah 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 blah, you are also wrong, right? Extremism in politics in any way, shape, or form is wrong, and that is just wrong. Right, I was talking about celebrating authoritarianism within. Is that not how you spell it? Authoritarianism, there we go, within modern politics to attain nativist populist goals. But also a populist thing to do. Yeah, so Piketty is populist, Viktor Orban is populist. Excellent, we're good. Yeah, right. Like, I should say celebrate. CPAC celebration of Viktor Orban. Within blah blah blah. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's continue. Where was I? Parks of semi-barbarous vagrants, blah blah. Okay, neither could enough calculate on the other, and we're starting on page 27. This is what the first new chapter. And if such cooperation is not to be expected in trivial matters, it is not to be thought of in the most vital matter of government, the choice of the executive ruler. To fancy that Northumberland in the 13th century would have consented to ally itself with Somersetshire for the choice of a chief magistrate is absurd. And again, we come back to this. This is the 13th century now, where Northumberland and Somersetshire were far enough apart and so different culturally that they simply could not cooperate on anything. Right? They were little petty kingdoms, and they were fighting each other, and Viking influences was much stronger in one compared to the other, etc., etc. It would scarcely have allied itself to choose a hangman. Even now, if it were palpably explained, neither district would like it. But no one says at a county election, the object of this present meeting is to choose our delegate to what the Americans call the Electoral College, to the assembly which names our first magistrate, our substitute for their president. Representatives from this county will meet representatives from other counties, from cities and boroughs, and proceed to choose our rulers. Such bald exposition would have been impossible in old times, and it would be considered queer, eccentric, if it were used now. Happily, the process of election is so indirect and hidden, and the introduction of that process was so gradual and latent that we scarcely perceive the immense political trust we repose in each other. And here again, we come to this same problem that I talked about just now, right? About how geographical divisions can make things really, really difficult if you put it in plain terms. Just like how today, where if we consider the different political landscapes to be geographical divisions, we can see very clearly, right, that the extreme right and left are moving farther away from each other. They are both quite authoritarian, if we're honest, and but other than that, they can barely stand each other because they just talk past each other. That is the British Leyland example. We'll talk about BL in some other. That's a whole other mess of stupidity. Blah blah. The best mercantile credit seems to those who give it natural, simple, obvious. They do not argue about it or think about it. The best political credit is analogous. We trust our countrymen without remembering that we trust them. A second and very rare condition of an elective government is a calm national mind, a tone of mind sufficiently stable to bear the necessary excitement of conspicuous revolutions. No barbarous, no semi-civilized nation has ever possessed this. The mass of uneducated men could not now in England be told, go to, choose your rulers. They would go wild, their imaginations would fancy unreal dangers, and the attempt at election would issue in some forcible usurpation. I remember now why I stopped at this page last time. Because I feel like I got to this part and was like, no, we have to talk about this. The incalculable advantage of august institutions in a free state is that they prevent collapse. The excitement of choosing our rulers is prevented by the apparent existence of an unchosen ruler. The poorer and more ignorant classes those who would most feel excitement would most be misled by excitement. Really believe that the queen governs, right? So this was back when Vicky was on the throne, Victoria, and Bagehot is essentially saying the stupid people believe that the queen actually governs, so that the lower classes believe that the queen governs, so that they could so that intelligent, quote unquote, intelligent men, and invariably they were men, could go about the business of running the country without those stupid people being influenced to choose sort of populist or demagogues, etc., etc. And it's sad, but this is exactly the problem that Bagehot was talking about, as we have seen, right? We have seen over and over again in democratic governments that when things are dependent on the popular vote, when it really comes down to the popular vote, and it actually is about popularity, we see populists take power, and populists are almost never the right people to hold on to power, because they're good at populism, but they're not good at governing. And governing requires a completely different set of skills than what populist leaders have, almost by definition, right? Because governing is about being able to include all of the disparate locusts of power within a country, and getting everyone to come together and maximize the ability to help everybody, whereas populism is sort of by definition about one group versus another, and you are essentially trying to shut out other locusts of power to focus on your own, right? And yes, let me write this down. Populism. What time were we at? 22. Let's say 22:0. By definition it is almost by definition the opposite of governing, right? When Bagehot talks about the fact that the lowest educated must be kept almost delusional, so that relatively intelligent men, quote unquote intelligent men, can get on the business of governing. And you can kind of see how this does establish our unfortunate modern the modern Whitehall system, right? Because Whitehall, for those who don't know, is essentially the name for the British bureaucracy. And during the height of the empire, really all of the governing took place within the civil service and the foreign office, all of that good stuff. And that is a elitist institution, right? And that is exactly what Bagehot talks about here, is the creation of such an elitist institution to govern the country, while ordinary poor people would just, go about their lives. Whitehall is and obviously, I'm not saying Whitehall is correct. The entire culture within Whitehall is not correct. Absolutely 100% not correct. Oh, my face died. 1 second. The entire culture within Whitehall is absolutely not correct. But you can see why Bagehot would claim that this should work better, I think. It doesn't matter if you are Democrat or... Oh, did it die again? It died again. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, right or left, progressive or nativist. Almost all extremes in modern society are talking about the need for holding on to power, right? So that you can implement whatever policies you want, and shutting out the competition. And really, oh, come now. No, the app has died. My phone has died. Everything has died. Queen Elizabeth has died. Oh my god. Anyway. The point is very simple, right? It's this is gonna take forever, so I'll just put that down for now. Whitehall is the result of this is the elitist result of this. Yes, I'm aware that my face is frozen. I'm trying to fix it, but like the technology that's doing this is dead. So there's actually literally nothing I can do about this right now. A result of this, but at the same time, it's obvious why Bagehot says this. Both nativists and progressives will probably agree that those who are not important should be shut out of government, right? I think that is fairly easy for everybody to agree to. It's just the difference is who is not important. The difference lies in who should be considered unimportant. Okay, let's see if my face works again. 1, 2, 1, 2. There we go. Hi. No. I will be right back in 1 second. Okay. So that's what we were saying. Let's move on. Blah blah. The poorer and more ignorant classes, those who would most feel excitement, who would most be misled by excitement, really believe that the queen governs. You could not explain to them the recondite difference between reigning and governing. The words necessarily to express it do not exist in their dialect. The ideas necessary to comprehend it do not exist in their minds. The separation of principal power from principal station is a refinement which they could not even conceive. They fancy they are governed by an hereditary queen, a queen by the grace of God, when they are really governed by a cabinet and a parliament, men like themselves, chosen by themselves. This conspicuous dignity awakens the sentiment of reverence, and men, often very undignified, seize the occasion to govern by means of it. Which is why, with Charles now at the head of state, I'm reminded of his signing. Just Charles. Just like my boy should just abdicate. Really, like Charles should not be the king. I'm not saying William will be much better, but by God, William would have been a better monarch than Charles. Lastly, the third condition of all elective government is what I may call rationality, by which I mean a power involving intelligence and yet distinct from it. A whole people electing its rulers must be able to form a distinct conception of distant objects. Mostly, the divinity that surrounds a king altogether prevents anything like a steady conception of him. You fancy that the object of your loyalty is as much elevated above you by intrinsic nature as he is by extrinsic position. You deify him in sentiment as once men deified him in doctrine. This illusion has been and still is of incalculable benefit to the human race. It prevents, indeed, men from choosing their rulers. You cannot invest with that loyal illusion a man who was yesterday what you are, who tomorrow may be so again, whom you choose to be what he is. But though this superstition prevents the election of rulers, it renders possible the existence of unelected rulers. Untaught people fancy that their king, crowned with a holy crown, anointed with the oil of Reims, descendant of the house of Plantagenet, is a different sort of being from anyone not descended of the royal house, not crowned, not anointed. They believe that there is one man whom by mystic right they should obey, and therefore they do obey him. It is only in later times, when the world is wider, its experience larger, and its laws colder, that the plain rule of a palpably chosen ruler is even possible. And here we come to this idea of divine rulership and the importance of station, right? And this is where I think, in my view at least, the American system is not as good as it is in the a normal parliamentary system. We'll talk about this and then we'll be done for today. So, in America, the office of the president is at once the dignified and is at once the head of the dignified and efficient branches of government. Or I shouldn't say branches, sides of government, right? Because we in America we have three branches of government. But the three branches of government are all under the efficient side of government that Badger talks about in this book. And the dignified branch is sort of the branch, the representative of the country that everyone can believe in, right? The dignified branch of government is the quote-unquote face of government that everyone can believe in. Does that kind of make sense? So like everyone in government can believe in the monarch in Victorian times or in Lizzie's time. Not so much Charles, right? Like Charles has really turbocharged Republican movements within the Commonwealth. It's it's incredibly disappointing, but that's besides the point. When the head of dignified and efficient branches are the same, it makes it really hard it makes it much easier for a populist to invoke how do we say, the government structures. Let's put it that way, right? And that's not to say that it can't happen in a constitutional monarchy, a parliamentary system. Of course it can, for example, Bojo. But that is in part because what has existed in the past no longer exists now, right? Like, obviously, nobody really, no matter how poor or how uneducated in Britain, really thinks that Queen Elizabeth is reigning and governing from Buckingham Palace, right? They understand that the Queen has been a figurehead for basically all of living memory. And so that's why Bojo was able to slowly climb his way out of it. It took a few generations, right? After the Second World War, it took 2 or 3 generations for that to become really clear in Britain, but it has become really clear in Britain, and that is why Bojo climbed in 2016, whereas Barry Goldwater was able to do whatever he did in America in whatever 1960, 45, 50, whatever. Actually, yeah, I'll look it up. Barry Goldwater, blah blah. He died in 98, but when did he do his thing? It's gonna take too long. It doesn't matter. So the entire point is, example, Barry Goldwater was able to bring populism about much earlier in America compared to Britain, GB. Let's say GB, because of the merging of the dignified and efficient side of government in the office of the president. There we go. Okay, and I know we're at 34 minutes and I know I have to go, so we shall leave it there for today. Unfortunately, we literally got into the second page of this chapter, and this is, I don't know, this was sponsored, so I guess that there's that. I don't know. Thank you to the particular sponsor for today for apparently humoring me. You don't need to humor me by sponsoring these things. We can. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, no, well, that's it for today. Yes, we're completely finished. Any final questions before I shut off the stream? No, I cannot. And I refuse to repeat the question. Other questions? I'm gonna ignore that one. I'm gonna ignore those. I'm gonna ignore those. See, you guys, you know these broadcasts are going out live to the public, so I can't answer half of those questions and then I have to go back afterwards and answer them. Or I can't answer 99% of those questions. I can't. The question I almost always only answer is what are we doing tomorrow? And tomorrow is Thursday, so we're going to do 20 minutes till dawn. That's what we're doing tomorrow. Excellent. Do we have any other questions? How can we save society? Communication, talking. When you think you know something, make sure you understand it before you believe that you know it properly. I think that is the key, right? What time is it? 36. 36:30. How can we save society? When you think you know some, actually, don't assume. That is literally all you have to do, is not assume you understand. Don't assume that you understand, that you know everything there is to know. Nobody has a monopoly on virtue. Nobody in this world, not even me, and even though I am obviously perfect, nobody holds a monopoly on virtue. You have to be able to listen to others. You have to be able to understand the situation before you can make a judgment. Everybody these days judges too quickly and too hard and assumes the worst because you all are refusing to communicate. You're refusing to talk, right? The only way we can really de-escalate anything is by talking. And I appreciate that in our modern society we have de-elevated the role of negotiations because people use it to their own benefit, to prolong conflict, to gain advantages. But it doesn't matter. You cannot resort to assumptions if you wish to have a polite society, right? Like, half the people right now in our server that are spamming me, I am watching them and I know exactly what they're assuming, right? Like you can see it in their words that they're assuming that I'm that I'm speaking about this from a progressive perspective, but I am genuinely not, because the the fault, the failure of communication lies just as much with the progressives as they lie with the nativists in our modern society. So how can we save society? Again, it's very easy. Don't assume, right? People are radicalized by their own assumptions, and when you do that, you make Muses sad. That's by assuming humanity thinks the worst of others, and when you do that, you make Muses sad. That is all there is, right? This is the it really is that simple. But is that simple? It's not, because the act of not assuming would go against everything that we are as humans, everything that our biology, our evolutionary biology tells us, everything that our cultural evolution has told us, right? And that's what makes it difficult. 40, oh, we're at 40 minutes. And this is what makes it the most difficult, because the act of assuming is written into humanity via biological and cultural evolution, and therefore fighting against assumptions is the hardest thing we can do. But I would claim that fighting against assumptions is the most human thing we can do, which is the imposition of humanity over nature. All right, fighting against the nature is the most human thing we can do. All of human society, all of human history has been one prolonged fight against a cruel nature that would have killed us, right? Like, all of human society is built upon this never-ending fight of survival in a beautiful, majestic, but cruel nature. All of human history is one prolonged fight against a beautiful, majestic, but cruel nature. That's literally the rise of modern civilization, of medicine, modern technology, is all this fighting against nature so that we can be more comfortable. And to me, fighting against assumptions is that fight, is that same fight. And I would hope that, some of you might subscribe to that. That's all there is, and thank you very much for watching. In conclusion, please download Firefox, please don't do Chrome, and thank you to our Mommy's Clique, Mommy's Corporation, for sponsoring this today. Do I feel better? No, obviously, because what does my rant do to make people to change hearts? It doesn't really, right? But thank you anyway for giving me this opportunity. In conclusion, please, I said already, and tomorrow we're doing 20 minutes till dawn, and let's do the left eye today. 3, 2, 1, wink. Wink? Wink. Bye. Yeah, such is life.